Chapter 73. Yet even then I knew I was pretending to be angrier than I really was. That just as she was trying to break down my hostility by calm, I was trying to break down her calm by hostility. I didn't in the least regret being ungracious, rebuffing her overtures, and I more than half meant at the time what I said about Allison, because this was now the active mystery, that I was not allowed to meet Allison. Something was expected of me, some Orphean performance that would gain me access to the underworld where she was hidden, or hiding herself. I was on probation, but no one gave me any real indication of what I was meant to be proving. I had apparently found the entrance to Tartaros, but that brought me no nearer Eurydice, just as the things Lily de Satas had told me brought me no nearer the permanent mystery. What voyage, what charts? My anger carried me through the next day, but the day after that I went to Somerset House and found that every fact Lily de Satas had given me to check was true, and somehow this turned my anger into a depression. That evening I rang up her number in Machadam. The Norwegian girl answered the phone. "Dinsmore House, please, who is it?" I said nothing. Someone must have called, because I heard the girl say, "There is no one to answer." Then there came another voice. "Hello? Hello?" I put down the receiver. She was still there, but nothing would make me speak to her. The next day, the third after the visit, I spent in getting drunk and in composing a bitter letter to Allison in Australia. I had decided that that was where she was. It said everything I had to say to her. I must have read it 20 times, as if by reading it enough I could turn it into the definitive truth about my innocence and her complexity. But I kept on putting off posting it, and in the end it spent the night on the mantelpiece. I had got into the habit of going down and having breakfast with Kemp most mornings, though not those last 3. I had got into the habit of going down and having breakfast with Kemp most mornings, though not these last 3, when I had carried with me a scowl against the whole human condition. Kemp had no time for the kitchen. Kemp had no time at all for the kitchen, but she could make a good cup of coffee, and on the 4th morning I badly needed it. When I came in, she put the Daily Worker down. She read the Worker for the truth, and a certain other paper for the fucking lies, and sat there smoking. Her mouth without a cigarette was like a yacht without a mast, one presumed disaster. We exchanged a couple of sentences. She fell silent, but during the next few minutes I became aware that I was undergoing a prolonged scrutiny through the smoke she wore like a merciful veil in front of her Gorgon-like morning face. I pretended to read, but that didn't deceive her. "What's up with you, Nick?" "Up with me? No friends, no girls, nothing." "Not at this time of the morning, please." She sat there dumpily, in an old red dressing gown, her hair uncombed, as old as time. "You're not looking for a job?" "That's all, my Fanny." "If you say so." "I'm trying to help you." "I know you are, Kemp." I looked up at her face. It was pasty, bloated, with the eyes permanently narrowed against tobacco smoke, somehow like a mask in a no play, which in an odd way suited the Cockney resonances that loitered in her voice and the hard anti-sentimentality she affected. But now, in what was for her age an extraordinary gesture of affection, she reached across the table and patted my hand. She was, I knew, 5 years younger than Lily de Satas, and yet she looked 10 years older. She was, by ordinary standards, foul-mouthed, a blatant member of what had been my father's most hated regiment, one he used to consign far lower even than the damned socialists, and the blasted Whitehall airy-fairies, the long-haired brigade. I had a moment's vision of his standing, his aggressive blue eyes, his bushy colonel's mustache in the door of the studio, the unmade divan, the stinking old rusty oil stove, the mess on the table, the garish, sexual, fetal, abstract oils that littered the walls, a tat of old pottery, old clothes, old newspapers. But in that short gesture of hers, and the look that accompanied it, I knew there was more real humanity than I had ever known in my own home. Yet still that home, those years, governed me. I had to repress the natural response. Our eyes met across a gap I could not bridge. Her offer of a rough, temporary motherhood, my flight to what I had to be, the lonely son. She withdrew her hand. I said, "It's too complicated." "I've got all day." Her face peered at me through the blue smoke, and suddenly it seemed as blank, as menacing as an interrogator's. I liked her, yet I felt her curiosity like a net drawn round me. I was like some freakish parasitic species that could establish itself only in one rare kind of situation, by one precarious symbiosis. They had been wrong at the trial. It was not that I preyed on girls, but the fact that my only access to normal humanity, to social decency, to any openness of heart, lay through girls, preyed on me. It was in that I was the real victim. There was only one person I wanted to talk with. Till then, I could not move, advance, plan, progress, become a better human being, anything. Until then, I carried my mystery, my secret, round with me like a defense, as my only companion. "One day, Kemp. Not now." She shrugged, gave me a stonily sibylline look, auguring the worst. The old woman who cleaned the stairs once a fortnight bawled through the door. My telephone was ringing. I raced up the stairs, lifting the receiver on what seemed the dying ring. "Hello? Nicholas Orff?" "Oh, good morning, Orff. It's me, Sandy Mitford." "You're back." "What's left of me, old man, what's left of me?" He cleared his throat. "Got your note. Wondered if you were free for a spot of Lunchington." A minute later, a time and place fixed, I was reading once more my letter to Allison. The injured Malvolio stalked through every line. In another minute there was no letter, but, as with every other relationship in my life, an eschar of ashes. The world is rare, but exact. Mitford hadn't changed at all. In fact, I could have sworn that he was wearing the same clothes, the same dark blue blazer, dark gray flannels, club tie. They looked a little shabbier, like their wearer. He was far less jaunty than I remembered, though after a few gins he got back some of his old gorilla cockiness. He had spent the summer carting bands of Americans round Spain. No, he'd received no letter from Fraxos from me. They must have destroyed it. There was something they hadn't wanted him to tell. Over sandwiches we had a talk about the school. Barani wasn't mentioned. He kept on saying that he'd warned me, and I said yes, he'd warned me. I waited for a chance to broach the only subject that interested me. Eventually, as I'd been hoping, he made the opening himself. "Ever get over to the waiting room?" I knew at once that the question was not as casual as he tried to make it sound, that he was both afraid and curious, that in fact we both had the same reason for meeting. "Oh, God, now, I meant to ask you about that. Do you remember, just as we said goodbye?" Yes, he gave me a tightly cautious look. "Never went to a bay called Moza? Rather jolly, over on the south side." "Of course, I know it." "Ever notice the villa on the cape to the east?" "Yes, it was always shut up, I was told." "Ah, interesting, very interesting." He looked reminiscently across the lounge, left me in suspense. I watched him lift an infuriating upward arc, his cigarette to his lips, the gentleman connoisseur of fine Virginia, then fumed smoke through his nostrils. Well, that was it, old boy. Nothing really. But why beware? Oh, it's nothing. No thing at all. Then you can tell me. I did, actually. You did. Row with collaborationist, remember? Yes. Same man who has the villa. Oh, but... I flicked my fingers. Wait a moment. What was his name? Conchis. He had an amused smile on his face, as if he knew what I was going to say. He touched his mustache, always preening his mustache. But I thought he did something rather fine during the resistance. Not on your Nelly. Actually, he did a deal with the Germans, personally organized the shooting of 80 villagers, then got his crowd chums to line him up with them, see, as if he were all brave and innocent. But wasn't he badly wounded or something? He blew out smoke, despising my innocence. You don't survive a German execution, old boy. No, the booger pulled a very fast one, acted like a traitor, and got treated like a bloody hero, even forged a phony German report on the incident. One of the neatest little cover-up jobs of the war. I looked sharply at him. A dreadful new suspicion crossed my mind. New corridors in the labyrinth. But hasn't anyone? Mitford made the Greek corruption gesture, thumb and forefinger. I said, You still haven't explained the waiting room business. His name for the villa, waiting for death or something, had it nailed up on a tree in Frog. His finger traced a line. Salle d'attente? What happened between you? Nothing, old boy. Absolutely nothing. Come on. I smiled ingenuously. Now I know the place. I remembered as a very small boy lying on the bough of a willow over a Hampshire stream. I was watching my father casting for a trout. It was his one delicacy, casting a dry fly, posing it on the water as soft as thistledown. I could see the trout he was trying to coax into a rise. And I remembered that moment when the fish floated slowly up and hovered beneath the fly, a moment endlessly prolonged in a heart-stopping excitement. Then the sudden swift kick of the tail and the lightning switch of my father's strike. The ratcheting of the reel. It's nothing, old boy, really. Oh, for God's sake, what's it matter? All damned absurd. The fish took the fly. Actually, I was out walking one day, May or June, can't remember. Bit browned off at the school, went over to Moza to swim, and well, I came down, you know the place, through the trees, and what did I see? Not just a couple of girls, but a couple of girls in next to nothing. Quick Rico, niftiest beeline I knew how toward them, said something in Greek, and damn me, they answered in English. They were English. Gorgeous creatures, twins. Good Lord, let me get you another gin. I stood at the bar waiting for the drinks and watched myself in the mirror, gave myself the smallest wink. Psygea. Well, you can imagine I moved in Polly fast. Consolidated position, found out who they were, old boy's godchildren up at the villa, bang out of the top drawer, finished in Switzerland, all that. Said they were there for the summer and that the old boy would very much like to meet me. Why didn't I come up for tea? Enough said. Off we trotted, meet the old boy. Tea. He had the same old habit of stretching his neck up as if his collar was too tight to make himself look a man of the world. This, what's his name, spoke English? Perfect. Moved round Europe all his life. Best society and all that. Well, actually I found one of the twins a shade off. Not my type. Rather marked the other for my area of hops. Okay, the old man and the not-on twin faded away after tea, and this girl, June, that was her name, took me round the property. Nice work. Didn't actually get round to unarmed combat at that point. But I sort of felt she was ready and willing. You know how it was on the island. Full magazine on and nothing to shoot at. Rather. He flexed his arm, caressed the back of his hair. Right. I trotted off back to the school. Tender farewell, invitation to dinner the next weekend. Week passes. I present myself over there in my number ones, other necessary equipment, drinks, girls looking smashing. But then he gave me a taut, suspenseful look. Well, as a matter of fact, the other girl, not June, got stinkers. Christ. I'd got her number the week before. One of these bloody intellectual girls pretend to be tough as nuts, but a couple of gins put 'em out stone cold. Well, it got pretty bloody dicey during dinner, damned embarrassing. This Julie girl took against me. Didn't take much notice at first. I thought, well, the girl's a bit squiffy. Time of the month or something, but actually she began to make fun of me in a damn silly sort of way. How? Oh, you know, copied my voice, way I say things. I suppose she was quite good at it. Damned offensive all the same. But what was she saying? Oh, a load of stupid cock about pacifism and the bomb, you know the type, and I just wasn't having any. Didn't the others join in? Hardly said a word, too damned embarrassed. Well, anyway, suddenly, wham, this Judy girl shouted a whole string of really bloody, nasty insults, lost her temper completely, and then all hell broke loose. This other June girl got up and went for her. The old man flapped his hands like a wounded crow. Then the Julie one rushed away. Then her sister. I was left sitting there with the old man. He started talking about them being orphans. Load of guff, sort of apology. What were these insults she shouted? Old boy, I can't remember now. The girl was pissed. He dredged his memory. Called me a Nazi, actually. A Nazi? One of the things we were rowing about was Mosley. You're not a... Of course not, old boy. Good God. He laughed, then flicked a look at me. But let's face it, not all Mosley says is rot. If you ask me, this country has got bloody sloppy. He stretched his neck. Bit more discipline, national pride. Maybe. But Mosley? Old man, don't get me wrong. Who the hell do you think I was fighting against in the war? It's just that, well, take your Spain. Look what Franco's done for Spain. I thought all he'd done was build a lot of dungeons in Barcelona. Ever been to Spain, old man? No, I haven't, as a matter of fact. Well, till you have, I'd keep quiet about what Franco has and hasn't done. I silently counted 5. Sorry, forget it. Do go on. As it happens, I'd read some of Mosley's stuff, and a lot of it makes sense. He articulated the words with curt clarity. Quite a lot of sense, I'm sure. He metaphorically preened his ruffled feather and went on. My twin came back. The old bloke left us for a few minutes, and actually seemed damn sweet. Of course, I played up the hurt line and sort of indicated that a little stroll in the moonlight later would help me get back to normal. And then she said, wham! Stroll? How about a swim? And believe me, old boy, you only had to hear her say it to see swimming might lead to very interesting other activities. Midnight on the dot at the gate. Okay, we go to bed at 11. I sit round waiting for 0 hour, slip out of the house, no problems, get to the gate. 5 minutes later, along she comes. And, old man, I can tell you, I've been in some clinches in my time, but that girl lit up like a bomb. Began to think Operation Midnight Swim was going to be canceled for a more important exercise, but she said she wanted to cool off for a while. I'm glad you didn't tell me all this before I went. The disappointment would have killed me. He smiled condescendingly. We got down to the beach. She says, I haven't got a costume. Do you mind going in first? I think, well, maybe she's shy. Maybe she wants to do the necessary. Fine. Operation Undress. She retires into the trees. Charlie does exactly what he's told, swims out 50 yards, treads water, waits 2 minutes, 3, 4, actually in the end about 10. Begins to feel damn cold. Still no girl. And your clothes gone? You've got it, old boy, stark naked, standing on that bloody beach hissing the damn girl's name. I laughed, but his smile was very thin. So, big joke, message received. You can imagine how damned angry I was by then. I gave her half an hour to come back, searched round, no go. Marched off to the house. Didn't do my feet much good. Tore a bit of pine branch off to cover the old privates if necessary. Fantastic. I was beginning to find it difficult not to grin all over my face, but I was clearly meant to share the outrage. Through the gate, up the drive thing toward the house, go round the front. What do you think I see there? I shook my head. A man hanging. You're joking. No, old boy, they were doing the joking. Actually, it was a dummy, like one of those things you use in bayonet practice, yes, filled with straw, strung up with a rope round its neck, and my clothes on, head painted to look like Hitler. Good God, what did you do? What could I do? Pulled the damn thing down and got my clothes off it. And then? Nix, they'd gone. Hooked it. Gone? Kike. Heard it down at Motza, though it was a fisherman. Left my bag out for me, nothing pinched, just that bloody 4-mile walk back to the school. You must have been furious. Was slightly choka, yes, but you didn't let them get away with it. He smiled to himself. Right. Quite simple. I composed a little report, first about the thing during the war, then a few little facts about where our friend Mr. Conchi's present political sympathies lay, sent it to the appropriate quarters. Communist? Since the end of the Civil War in 1950. Communists had been hounded relentlessly in Greece. Knew some in Crete. Just said I'd seen a couple on Phraxos and followed them to his house. That's enough. That's all they want. A little bit goes a long way. Now, you know why you never had the pleasure. I fingered the stem of my glass, thinking that, on the contrary, this absurd man beside me was probably why I had had the pleasure. Somewhere that previous year, as June had admitted, they must have made a bad miscalculation and given up. Such an absence of cunning in the fox must have made them call off the hunt almost as soon as it started. What had Conchi said about my own initial participation being a matter of hazard? At least I had given them a run for their money. I smiled at Mitford. And so you had the last laugh. Habit of mine, old boy. Suits my complexion. Why on earth did they do it in the first place? I mean, all right, they didn't like you, but they could have given you the brush off from the beginning. All that stuff about their being the old boy's godchildren. Oh, my eye. Of course they weren't. They were a pair of high-class tarts. Language the Julie one used gave the game away. Damn funny way of looking at you. Suggestive? He glanced at me. It was the sort of setup you run across in the Mediterranean. Originally or Eastern Mediterranean. I've met it before. You mean? I mean, quite crudely, old boy, that the rich Mr. Conchis wasn't quite up to the job, but he, shall we say, still got pleasure from seeing the job performed. Again, I surreptitiously eyed him, knew myself lost in the interminable maze of echoes. Was he or wasn't he? But they didn't actually suggest anything. There were hints. I worked them out afterwards. There were hints. He went away and got 2 more gins. You might have warned me. I did, old boy. Not very clearly. You know what Zan Fielding used to do to any new chaps who were shooted in when we were up in the Levka Ore? Send 'em wham, straight out on a job. No warnings, no sermons, just watch it, okay? I disliked Mitford because he was crass and mean, but even more because he was a caricature, an extension of certain qualities in myself. He had on his skin, visible, the carcinoma I nursed inside me. I had to suspect the old paranoia that he might be another plant, a test for me, a lesson, but yet there was something so ineffably impervious about the man that I could not believe he was so consummate an actor. I thought of Lily de Satas, how to her I must seem, as Mitford did to myself, a barbarian. We moved out of the mandrake on to the pavement. I'm off to Greece next month, he said. Oh. Firm's going to start tours there next summer. Oh, God, no. Do the place good. Shake their ideas up. I looked down the crowded Soho street. I hope Zeus strikes you with lightning the moment you get there. He took it as a joke. Age of the common man, old boy, age of the common man. He held out his hand. I would have dearly loved to have known how to twist it and send him wham straight over my shoulder. The last I saw of him was of a dark blue back marching toward Shaftesbury Avenue, eternally the victor in a war where the losers win. Years later I discovered that he had been acting that day, though not in the way that I feared. His name caught my eye in a newspaper. He had been arrested in Torquay on charges of issuing checks under false pretenses. He'd been doing it all over England, using the persona of Captain Alexander Mitford, DSOMC. In fact, said prosecuting counsel, although the accused went to Greece in the occupying forces after the German collapse, he played no part whatever in the resistance. Later there was another bit. Sometime after demobilization, Mitford returned to Greece, where he obtained a teaching post by forging false references. He was subsequently dismissed from this post. Late that afternoon, I dialed the Much-Haddam number. It rang a long time, but then someone answered. I heard Lily de Satas's voice. She was out of breath. Dinsford House? It's me, Nicholas Orth. Oh, hello. She said it with a bright indifference. Sorry, I was in the garden. I'd like to see you again. There was a small pause. I have no news. I'd still like to see you. I knew she was smiling in the silence that followed. She said, When?